Welcome to our 4th episode of Synchronicity, the podcast where we know that nothing is a coincidence and thus everything is intentional. You are tapping into the root of the symmetry. I am your host, Trismegistus, broadcasting live from Mercury. You are tuned into the mind of Trip C, the trippy Trip C, here to bring some clarity as to why the medical industry is using my creation to practice all this medicine, to practice all this alchemy, to make so much money. Right? When we think about how much money the medical industry makes, it's unimaginable, right? Like basically they make money matter. And that's what this podcast is all about. How spirits use Hermeticism to create life so that they can build structures off of keeping you ignorant to being intelligently somatic. Because without knowing why the medical industry is using my creation to practice alchemy on you, then you may very well continue to trust them. The point here is, though, I, as Hermes Trismegistus, have not authorized the U.S. or any European medical institution, to use my Caduceus to practice medicine. So the fact that you see the Caduceus as such a prominent medical symbol, yet it's only able to be tied and authored to me, Hermes Trismegistus, there's no one else, all right? There's literally no one else, all right? The Caduceus is mine. Therefore, only I can tell you what it represents and why other entities would be wanting to use it against you and use it to build their world. So, before we get into all that, we're about to chill and bop with our Caduceus cannabis vibe. About to simmer my trees. About to relax a little bit. I will see you on the other side of this vibration as we build a whole new vibe nation.
My soul's been crying. I simmer my trees, breathe in my leaves, balance my chi, triple my C. My mind's been flying wild, my soul's been crying. I simmer my trees, breathe in my leaves, balance my chi, triple my C. My soul's been crying wild, my mind's been flying so high. Through the astral plane, macabre brain, I built your game, we're not the same. My soul's been crying wild, mind's been flying to relay a word. Those who listen heard. We make our vibe from deep inside. My soul's been crying while my mind's been flying back into my space, called away with haste, so I'll fall with grace to thrill my chase. My mind's been flying while my soul's been crying too. Water my earth, I know my worth. My soul gives birth to all my work. My mind's been flying while my soul's been crying, so I can't connect with those you neglect. Time to correct how we reflect. My mind's been flying while my soul's been crying too. Who flood the sea with energy from my inner chi? I'm free to be me. I felt to inspire you to say how to fly higher too. Fly higher too. Fly higher too. Hang out with the family, your true spot. Don't be sad if you forgot that you've got a spirit's run and you're not true to this spot. Flip a script and break the facade. Take a trip and go abroad. When you're brave, they will apply. We get in touch with your true God. I've been fighting. I've been fighting. Even when I'm dancing with demons, reversing curses and scheming, they be fiending for reasons to change the sins like the seasons. So I've been falling, cause y'all been calling my mind out of my spirit. I feel it best when I'm near it, but y'all cry for help and I hear it. So Hermes flies out to stare it in a new healthy direction. Will grow through natural connection. So I simmer my trees, breathe in my leaves, balance my chi, triple my C to level up like it's nothing, to turn into something, to bust into function, bumping and pumping with all the wisdom I'm gushing. And when I simmer my trees, breathe in my leaves, balance my chi, triple my C, I fell to inspire you. Simmer higher, I simmer in the skies, I triple in my chi, then I open up my eyes. Symmetry, I balance in my seasons, I mother the cohesion that keeps us intertwined. Symmetry, balance in my seasons, and I don't need a reason to fulfill my desires. Symmetries.
So why is the US using my staff, using my Caduceus to sell you medicine to benefit their medical staff? Why is the medical industry using this stick with 2 wings and 2 snakes all wrapped around it to peddle all of these new substances that they've alchemized from nature? There's a lot of ways that I could go on this. So again, just know, I'm saying again, just know this isn't scripted. None of these podcasts are scripted. So I have the general gist of what I want to get into. The point is that we're both tapping into the mind of Mercury. All right. When I'm in my conscious awareness, me being able to sit down and do this podcast is rejuvenating for me to be able to tap into my spirit and let it communicate unfiltered through my body, instead of my body being limited to focusing and paying attention to what's in the world already. So this is me literally getting to bring whole new information from my soul into the world. So as a spirit who has single-handedly authored the Caduceus, just like I've single-handedly authored Hermeticism, the Caduceus is no different. That's mine. That's an expression of my spirit, and is an expression of what we all do. So the Caduceus, if you haven't seen it, you almost certainly have at this point, but look it up, right? It's the staff, long straight stick. It's got a nice ball at the top. It's got 2 wings feathering from below the ball, and there are 2 snakes coiling up around it in like a vortex type scenario. So it's like a snake tornado just coiling up around the staff, and then there's wings blossoming out the top. And there's a lot of meaning to it. It's very simple, but it's gonna get long, as I already see as I'm getting into it. So before I get into what the symbol actually is, it has been used by the US government to sell medicine for centuries. Over a century. Centuries? It's been used by European medicine for centuries, and Europe has become the US, of course. So it's just that timeline. The fact is, Europe has been obsessed with me as Hermes and using my creations to do their thing, because that's all they kind of know how to do, is to colonize and consume other people's things and then use it to do their own thing. So this is why we're literally in a time where the medical industry can ignore spirituality, but they're going to use the creation of a spirit to tell you to ignore spirituality. So many people very well just not believe in me as Hermes, not believe in me as the creator of the system that they believe in, but they believe in the system because the system is there physically. And then that's like, I guess, the complete definition of someone being lost in physical reality. that even if they're like standing looking at the building and they see the Caduceus, and I'm here like, hey, these entities have specifically colonized it from me because their intentions are negative. If you're lost in light, you're not going to care. You're not even going to care about the symbol that these people are using to make their structure matter. And that's where true ignorance is. People who don't care about signs and symbols and the fact that everything means something. Again, you're just ignoring the hermetic facts of life. So if a spirit is using something to trap your attention, like a story in a movie, for example, then everything that's happening in that movie is like esoterically important, and it's all a vibration at that point. And for a spirit to use the truth to tell you that the truth is not real is, well, the ultimate form of capitalism, the ultimate form of how the medical industry has been thriving using my Caduceus. So they have been using my staff mainly, like if we're going to say the logical reason, their logical reason would be that Hermes is the god of, well, I mean, I'm about to say communication, which then boils into everything. Like, because everything's communication. So as far as being the god, the messenger god, and then the god of alchemy, and then the god of medicine, and then the god of commerce, that's where the US would be calling upon my Caduceus, Europe would be calling upon the Caduceus to push medicine. And originally, historically, it started out as being focused on alchemy. Now we see that it's more so about commerce. So these entities are using my Caduceus to weaponize the fact that spirits are healthy. We create health by alchemizing elements from nothing into something. And then that's a whole science of just chemistry or alchemy. And that's what the Caduceus is all about. It's about alchemizing your nothing into something. And this is then where I have to say the Caduceus is representative of your spine. So I made the Caduceus to represent the human spine and represent the spine of animals in general, but this is specifically applicable for us as humans here in terms of the Kundalini energy, right? And raising our serpents up through our spine and keeping everything aligned, decolonize your face, and creating that space in our face, right? So our spines can actually be straight and energy can properly flow. It's about knowing that we are creating our bodies, we're creating structures because we desire to communicate our nothing into something. And that is then where the structure that we've created is thus animated and operated by our nothing into something. And our nothing into something is our mind. So our something is our body. Our nothing into something is our mind. Our nothing is our spirit. And everything that we imagine is our God. Because like everything is coming from our imagination. And how we feel about that is our soul. So your mind is a combination of your imagination and your soul coming together. And it's constantly making something from nothing. And the more consistently you communicate in a certain way, you create nothingness that then creates a body. It builds structures that supports your desire to communicate whatever you've got going on. So that's the point of the Caduceus and me making it to represent your body, and thus why I use it to relay messages throughout simulations. Like just all realms and realities, I'm flying from my simulation of Mercury into other simulations, into other spaces, for lack of better words, realms and realities, to relay whatever I got to relay. I mean, again, like I got into in the last episode, I get called away from my space when a simulation wants me to teach Hermeticism. It's basically that simple. Because Hermeticism is what these entities, as we're talking about with the medical industry, have been using to enslave everybody. They're using spirituality to keep everyone ignorant and dumb so that they can then capitalize on your chi. And this is a phrase that I've come up with within the last year as I've started to develop all this, because that's what it is about, capitalizing on your chi. And your body is your ability to capitalize on your chi, aka you're making money out of yourself, out of your own ability to communicate. That's what your body is. Your mind, your muscle is money. You are making how you change matter. That's what money is. So that's the point of any structure. And that's why all structures are changing. Everything in life is transforming. It's just as spirits, we are constantly making how we transform matter. And that how is the pain. That's the water. And the transformation is us being in that water cycle, but we want to stabilize it. So that takes communication, which is why we're always communicating if we are aware and experiencing something. And thus anything that we're observing is going to be polarized, because that's us being the observer, saying that life is created from the combination of fire and water. And it's lit. All that stuff like we talked about in the last episode. So the medical industry is using the Caduceus historically because I, as the god of alchemy, am all about teaching Hermeticism to spirits, to everyone, sharing the wisdom of how we create our bodies because we feel like connecting our nothingness to something. And then that looks like all the elements and all the science that I bring all the logic to. And the whole point of me bringing logic and everything with these words is so that we can know that we're infinitely individual. This is why I hate being worshipped. I hate people giving me their power. It's one of the ugliest things when those girls, those cults, those women, whatever, those sex fiends, those demons, those witches. Joke your way out of the tragedy. No one is ever going to understand how much turmoil and pain I've gone through being worshipped. It is not fun. It's not positive. It does not feel good it's not good. It's just not positive. It's not fun. It's not helpful. It's not productive to get worship, to get attention from people like you can save them. So that's why symmetry, the idea of like me as a superhero and me just learning about myself, I'm like, well, I don't want, like, you can't save people. I know you can't save people. And that was just, again, like this subconscious knowing of who I am, knowing that we create life in some way. So to save someone is just you stepping out of your space to connect with someone else, instead of you learning that that was a way that you should have connected with yourself more consciously. Because everything that we see in the world, right, this is why white supremacist colonizers are so lost, because they want to constantly consume everything that indigenous peoples create, so that they can then use those creations to tell indigenous peoples that they're not creative. And then they think that that's them being God. And this is what progress is. This is what the future is going to be. And it is the just complete symptom of a spirit wanting to control everything outside of themselves because they have no control over their insides. And this is why white supremacists use my Caduceus. This is why the medical industry is using my Caduceus, and they're going so hard using it, yet they will surely deny that Hermes is a real guy. Like, they'll use an idea that was created by me as a spirit, but they're going to use that idea to say that I as a spirit am not real. And that's how they're going to make money. All right. So that, like, that's white supremacy, bro. It's wild. Like, white supremacy is literally just the epitome of a spirit being like, okay, I'm going to use light to do what I want. And what I want to do is hurt other people and make them feel like they need me. So I'm going to go out of my way to hurt others. And then after I hurt them, I'm going to create the situation where they need me. And that's the medical industry, right? You can watch The Boys. The Boys, as in that Amazon show, is fire. It is perfectly summing up what the medical industry is. Because this is where it gets deep. I'm about to get a little deep. Let me simmer some more trees. This is why I'm here to teach fasting. And why it's so important that we fast diligently. Because the medical industry, the Industrial Revolution, the industry, the entities that are using my Caduceus to practice medicine are the ones who are actively spreading chemicals and poisons into the environment, because it is the byproduct of their alchemy. So again, we know that spirits use elements to create life, and that's what alchemy is, and that's everything we talk about in Hermeticism and Semicism. The white supremacist version of that is saying, yeah, no alchemy. Actually, it's this new branch that we made up where we're now going to create a bunch of elements, and we have 100 things on a periodic table, and they're all different, and now we're smarter than the past, when literally it's just a bunch of made up logic that's actually blocking the flow of life. And this is why science is infinitely unintelligent, because they're just actually making up logic from like the wrong perspective, the wrong foundation, from just the wrong awareness. Like they're working from the bottom up instead of the top down, right? So, I mean, perfect example is them trying to figure out, how did I build the pyramids? How did Hermes build the pyramids? How did Thoth build the pyramids? They must have had slaves. They moved rocks together. How did they move all those rocks together? No, that's a projection of your mind. You use slaves. You enslave indigenous peoples to build your stuff with rocks. We build our structures happily, healthily, and harmoniously, hermetically, from our homes, from our hearts, from higher dimensions. Which is why they're just so in accordance with the natural simulation. Because there's the point of knowing that life itself is us alchemizing nothing into something. And the more you can be in tune with the fact that spirits are creating life around you all the time, that's where magic comes in. And then that's where the power of being a true magician, being a true alchemist is. And this is why I made symmetry. This is why I just love being me, genuinely. I can't not be me. I can't not be this expression. Like, this is what I've created these things to express myself. No one knows a Caduceus like me. It's impossible for me to be here making things up. I actually have to censor myself, because I'm pretty sure most people won't understand the things that I would really like to explain in terms of how deep this stuff goes. But the point is, I'm here to keep it simply symmetry, simply balanced. Not too complex, but not too simple, so that we can all get it and build upon it. That's the point. Air needs to be balanced so it can settle into the structures, right? So Hermes needs to be balanced so he can settle into Thoth. Hermes needs to be symmetry so he can settle into Tahuti. So let me get a little more balanced in my symmetry as I symmetries. Because this is what I do. I'm Chase Callaway for a reason. I get called away from my space to help. And if I'm not getting called away from my space to help, then best believe I'm alone in my space. Like, that's the point of being hermetic, a hermit. And this is, again, I'm the natural expression of myself. I have to be me. You feel me? Just like you have to be you. This is why I'm the messenger of God in all lifetimes. Because it's just, even in this situation, right, where no ego, I made up a whole new character called Symmetry, just for me to find out that it's only the progression of what I've been doing, and it can't be anything but. You know, so that's the inevitability of spirit. As a spirit, when you express yourself, all you're going to do is learn about who you are as an individual. And we are all separate in our imaginations. None of us have the same imagination. That's the point of us even expressing ourselves. Now, when we want to feel like we're part of one imagination, that spirit's being polarized then. They're like, okay, wait, I'm not an individual, I'm part of a collective. So now they're completely serving another individual. And this is where the one God thing comes in. And the whole idea of like, oh, we're all one universe, we're all one. See, like that Billy Carson guy, So many people out here. Shout out Billy Carson, by the way. Shout out, everybody. I love all of you. It's just so sad how lost everyone is, in that, like, we're actually all we're all different fragments of consciousness, and we're just playing out one entity's wet dream of fighting itself. Bro, like, I remember playing with those concepts before my spirit straight up woke me up. And I would get so angry. So I remember that stuff, and I'm supposed to channel that anger right now. That really pisses me off. The idea, and people like really believing it, that we're all one consciousness. So you're saying none of us have any individuality. Like, none of us have free will. I'm not choosing to be here. I'm just an extension of something that I'm unaware about because you told me. So really, because you're the one who made me aware that I'm part of something that I'm unaware about, I should actually be worshiping you. And that's just more white supremacist shit. That's more of that science stuff, bro. Like, where they're like trying to be like, actually, don't worship anyone. You're part of one God. But then the fact that this person had to tell you that you're part of one God, now you feel like you need to connect to them to be more of that God. Like, oh, well, clearly they have the answers. Science knows what's up. They're the ones who told us. They told me that we're all one consciousness. Everything's energy. All right. So the next episode and the episode after this, I'll be getting into numbers and elements, and then we'll get into letters and everything. In terms of everything that I've covered in my series in the building blocks of life and dissect the dialect, but making it all nice for podcast form, because this is why I'm here. Everyone's lost. Everyone's lost in light. People don't know that they, as a spirit, are creating themselves every second. And your creation is your communication. And that is what allows people to see you. And it takes me saying this. It takes me being Chase Clarence Calloway to ride the frequency of the sea frequently to be able to get this message out for everybody. And that's why I love fasting. Fasting allows me to be faster. Fasting allows my vibration to be higher so I can ride the frequency of my true nothing spirit. Because that's the thing, when the medical industry is using my Caduceus to tell you that the base of the food pyramid is sugar. Oh, bro, like, I really grew up in that. I really grew up in a school system that's teaching me, hey, the foundation of food is grains. Straight up sugar. Straight up carbohydrates. They manufacture sickness inside of all of us just by making the foundation of the food pyramid grains. I promise. The whole point is to get everyone addicted to sugar and to get everyone in lower vibrations so that they're not able to actually ride the frequency of their spirit. They're now forced to ride the frequency of their body, and their body is at the whim. It's being controlled by the white supremacist monetary money systems that are telling it that it can kill it if it doesn't serve said system, right? So now all these people, because they're trained by the system that is enslaving their minds to eat all day, every day, they are in like a Stockholm syndrome scenario of being addicted to the poisons that their captors are forcing upon them. And they don't know that there's something better because they're just not connected with themselves. They're not connected in their own spirit, in their own space. And thus they don't know that they're actually able to create heaven. And the point then of connecting with others is actually to bring heaven into hell. And this is why Hermes, when I'm alone, I'm in heaven. I'm symmetry when I'm in hell, when I'm with you. When I'm with you, I'm in hell. When I'm alone, I'm in heaven. And that's all of us. So all of us as spirits, when we're all alone, we're in heaven. That's our home. Your home is your haven, your heaven. And then when you feel like connecting with others, that's where heaven becomes hell. Because now you have to compromise. Now you create the sea. Now you create water. Now you have to cool down. You can't be too hot. Hermes is too hot for this world. Hermeticism is too hot for relatability. All right. So many people can't stand hearing me talk too much about Hermeticism because it triggers them in terms of like, wait, but I didn't create the situations I'm in. Like, all right, well, here's Semicism. Cynicism is knowing that life is hermetic, but how do you feel about that? And this is where cynicism is about connecting and communicating with your spirit, with the tools that you have right now. And this is where life transforms. If you can just meditate, if you can just chill out, get some clarity, and calm your mind down, and realize that you are nothing, and then connect with that nothingness. I'm like literally just smiling bigly right now as I'm connecting more with my spirit. Life is way better. That's a perfect way of how you would start writing your own frequency. So this is what the Caduceus represents, by the way. The Caduceus, the wings at the top, are literally about your mind. And how when you take your serpents, so your serpents are your ability to have sex. Your snakes are your sex. When you take that and go inside of yourself, so instead of focusing on the outside and focusing your attention on all these other things and how you want to have sex with this next thing and this outside thing, you want to connect with this thing, because that's what sex is, right? You want to connect. You want to be inside of and get pleasure from connecting, because that's the ultimate desire that drives all life, as we can see. We're all only in human bodies because other humans had sex. Animals are only animals because animals had sex. So life is constantly created from us having sex. It's just about, are you having more sex externally or internally? The Caduceus is all about internal sex. Again, this is hermetic. Only I can tell you this. The Caduceus is all about having sex inside of yourself and bringing your serpents into your own space, which is actually what creates, which we'll get into in the Dissect the Dialect portion of this podcast, ST ability. If you haven't watched Dissect the Dialect, definitely check that out. Have it on the website. Have it in a very nice page. We have it in the first, just like a nice alphabet go through of how spirits use the English alphabet to architect simulations. And then we have the next phase, which is the cycle of three. And the cycle of three is how spirits build structures by going through this certain mathematical process over and over. And this is what we're all doing on a subconscious level. I'm just bringing words and titles to it so we can do it more consciously. And then after we get through that cycle of three, of how that then manifests in the alphabet, because we can see then that each three letters in the alphabet is going to repeat the ways that spirits use this element structure to create life, which is fire, water, air, fire, water, air, fire, water, air. So all earth that you can see, because everything you can see is earth, like it's a box. Anything that you can see is the earth. It's created from fire, water, air, fire, water, air, fire, water, air, fire, water, air, fire, water, air. And that's all expressing nothing. So this is why everything's spiritual. And it's just about fire being that awareness, and then water being the reflection and connection with one's awareness, and then air being the expression and balance of that, so it can settle into something practical and stable, which is then where we create light that becomes matter or dense, heavy flesh material over time, because time is us waiting in the connection. So the more we feel like connecting with something, the more time we give it, and then the heavier that connection gets, right? That's how all relationships work. That's what life is. This is what we're doing all the time. We're in life building connections with people, and best believe, right? The longer you wait in a connection, the heavier it gets.